Hello everyone, if this is your first talk with us today, then welcome to the Sales Enablement Festival. And for those of you who've already been tuning in to our selection of talks, welcome back. We have so much more amazing content heading your way, but before we get back into it, we just want to take this moment to thank all our amazing sponsors and partners for bringing this virtual festival to life. We also want to thank you, our attendees, for joining us today. If you're enjoying the content from the festival, be sure to check out the SEC membership plans. It's here where you can gain access to exclusive content, research and frameworks, and discounts to things like our brand new workshop series and so much more. You can find more information about this over on the Sales Enablement Collective website. Don't forget to have your questions ready for the live Q&A at the end of this talk, as you'll have the chance to put them to the experts themselves. That's everything from me, so all that's left to do is sit back and enjoy this next talk. Hello everyone, and yes, welcome back to this next talk. This talk is hosted by Maya Garza, who is the Vice President of People Insights over at BetterUp, and she's going to talk to you all about our traditional sales enablement practices overlooking the obvious. So I'd like to welcome Maya to the virtual stage. And over to you.
Thank you so much, Jack. Really appreciate it, and very excited to speak with everyone today. As Jack mentioned, my name is Maya Garza. I'm looking forward to talking with you specifically on how we think differently about the impact we can have on sales enablement, sales professionals, and the simple shifts that we can make to make an outsized impact. I will say that I am also joined by a colleague, Adam. So please feel free to use the chat, drop in questions, drop in comments, and we will get to all of those. Adam may answer some as we go through, or we might just capture them towards the end, but really appreciate you joining us today. So focusing on why we should be thinking differently about sales enablement, I'd like to dig into three areas with you today. So the first is really, what is our state of sales? Something that I think in some ways won't shock you, but I think I want to hone in on a couple of really critical things. And then, of course, we'll dig in onto how do we do things differently, and then also think about the impact that we can have within our organizations and our revenue generating teams particularly. So let's dig in. I am sure you have seen these headlines. It is no easy road out there. I spend hours upon hours every week speaking to sales enablement professionals, to sales leaders, and they're all struggling with an aspect of this. And their people are struggling to stay engaged, to stay motivated, excited, committed, and so on. But the reality is, it's harder to be in sales than ever before. And while the world has shifted around us as a result of COVID, we can't ignore the fact that we were actually already moving in this direction pre-pandemic. The role of sales is getting more complex. We expect more from our sellers, and they frankly are expecting more from us. And so the days of sales enablement being largely focused on training of the product or the tool should be behind us. And while we are constantly thinking about new, better ways to ramp, to upskill, enabling the seller through the sale, we don't always leave enough space to think of the person behind the sale, the seller. And despite the growth and the focus of field enablement, sales enablement, we've actually found ourselves going back to these older practices of training, and with limited time and resources. And we tend to focus on tools and methodologies. But I think, as all of us know here, sometimes it's just not the sale that needs the support, or if it is, it's actually just not enough. And that's where I say that not everybody needs more tools or methodologies or more product overviews, but everyone does need help somewhere. Help to get ahead of stressful triggers. Help to rise to a new challenge. Help to break free from intergenerational patterns holding us back. Help to learn how to press pause in a role that is filled with loads of overwhelm. And now this might not actually be what you pictured when you were thinking about the talk that I'd be giving or what sales enablement should be doing. And that's really purposeful because we need to start thinking differently. And I'd like to do that with you today. So when we look at the cross-time trend lines of well-being and productivity, and this is better up data over the course of the last 18 months across thousands and thousands and thousands of individuals, it's clear that there is this really tight relationship between well-being and productivity. When well-being is high, productivity tends to be high. The holidays, I will say, are an obvious and largely expected exception to that rule. But even so, we saw no time of high productivity without correspondingly high well-being level. So in other words, when it comes to productivity, well-being might not be all that matters, but it is absolutely necessary. But what does that like really mean in sales if we dig under that? So double clicking here for a second, what I'd really love to focus on is how deeply troubling the current experiences have been for sales professionals. And what you're looking at here are how sellers and sales managers perform compared to individuals in other functions. And more specifically, on the absolutely essential behaviors for sales team success. And sales managers, particularly, are struggling to align and coach their team. Their problem solving and their cognitive agility, which, by the way, is like absolutely essential when we think about context switching from one challenge or activity to the next. Probably none of us know what that feels like. And truly, the sellers and the sales managers' ability to motivate and empower their teams is drastically lower than their counterparts in other functions. And that's kind of shocking. And we should be asking ourselves, like, what are we doing about this today? And the reality is that we continue to take a more traditional approach. And that's not to say that all is lost. It's not. We absolutely still need sales kickoffs and great training. We do need the products and the solution overviews. But this can turn into this kind of vicious cycle of catch up with ourselves. And so sales enablement partners, like we're typically working with at Better Up, are often trying to break this cycle of largely the tech stack of processes of traditional training delivery as the cornerstone of their initiatives. And I do want to be clear because I think what we don't want to take away is that these things aren't needed. They are. Absolutely. The technology enables the processes, it speeds up the activity of our sellers. The training creates a much, much needed basic understanding of our solutions. But that's just not enough. So we really have to ask ourselves, what is tying all of this together? How are we helping our sales managers and reps kind of wade through this often overwhelming experience of internalizing and processing the tools, the resources, the training? How are we thinking about whether they have the ability to just pause and think, what do I use when? What will happen if I just take over this discussion from my sales rep versus empowering them to learn from and own the conversation, even if they might fail? How do I think about my territory and account plans as a strategic exercise that unlocks even more opportunity for me? What do I do if I'm too worried or overwhelmed with high stakes conversations and just not sure where to go? Or this one, which I know every single sales professional feels at one point or another, is what if I'm just not good enough? How do I pick myself back up from that last abysmal quarter I had? Or even better, how do I maintain this crazy pace and level of performance that I had in this next quarter? And so this is where I want to challenge us to think differently about what we're doing today. we're focusing on the same old tools, methodologies, training techniques, and we're missing an opportunity to focus on the mindsets of the sales professionals that will get us more impact, that will get them more impact. So we can actually maximize the investments we're making as sales professionals in the tech, in the processes, in the training, by focusing on what actually brings it all together for the sales professionals. And that's the behaviors and the mindsets. And I know, a little bit funny here, but sometimes you need a mental break. Be real for just a second. We can't clone your best sales managers and sales reps. It's not what we promise to do. But what we can be doing is cloning their successful mindsets and behaviors. And so then ask yourselves, just imagine for 1 second, if all your revenue generating team members started to perform just 10% better, what would that do for your organization? Just 10%, not going anything crazy, but do that math. So let's do things differently, why don't we? Let's bridge the gap. Let's bridge the gap between the sale and the seller. I really love this quote. It's from one of our members. It's a sales manager we recently worked with who had this, I think for her, tremendous epiphany. And it may actually seem like a simplistic one to use here today, but I think it's this fundamental blocker that actually exists for many sales managers, something that they do not instinctively know, and what ultimately results in the struggles of them and their sales teams. And so this manager here, she was working with her Better Up coach, and she had this realization that she actually needed to dig down and learn her people and what motivated each one of them. What's not in this part of the quote, there's only so much space on the slide without making it teeny tiny for you, is that she actually started off believing everyone was like her, and that every one of her team members would be motivated in a similar way that she was. And this shift in her thinking that she was able to get to, and what ultimately led to a very different way in how she managed and led her team, actually ultimately led her team to then outperform in the next quarter versus having struggled in the previous quarter. And so let me then briefly back up and tell you how we help sales managers and reps learn and practice the mindsets and behaviors that lead to their and their organization's success. And as I start doing this, I want to encourage you to go ahead and put any questions you have in chat here if you haven't already. And even maybe a reflection on, have you seen some of this happening in your organization today? And what shifts are you thinking about needing to make? Okay, so go ahead and share that in chat. Like, what is going through your mind right now about the shifts that you might need to make? So diving into this flywheel. So what you see here is this connection of identifying what matters. So we have thousands of points of data that tells us that what matters for sales performance, as I shared kind of with you previously. And so we identify, and then we focus on transforming current thinking and behavior to the point that it becomes an embedded practice. And then we measure to ensure that change is sticking and that it's having those top line impacts on the business. And for the individual sales manager and reps, this kind of happens in 4 critical ways. So through our Better Up platform and experience, each member of the sales team completes a sales behaviors and mindsets assessment. This helps hone in on the critical opportunities and strengths that they have. That information, plus the overall goals and objectives of your organization, are actually used in a fancy big algorithm on the back end to recommend the deeply experienced sales coach that will help each of your individual's sales member close the gaps that they have today. And they do that by considering the context of the organization, because they're going to deeply understand what you're driving towards in your business. And then throughout the ongoing coaching experience, the coach and our platform recommend content just right for each person and the growth initiative within the organization. And that is all tied together in this clear goal setting and tracking that creates accountability and ties back to results for your organization. So it's this kind of like seamless experience for sales professionals, creating what I kind of describe as like a magnetic pull back to the experience, because they are receiving real-time support to address their challenges. They're getting tips and recommendations on what to put into practice immediately. They get the opportunity to practice that. They get the personal reinforcement, and this kind of delightful reward cycle of impact and success is what drives their engagement and participation. And so that circle happens because we combine the needs of each salesperson with what matters to your organization. And we help them integrate the support into their flow and into what you're looking to achieve as the sales enablement professionals. So they see the impact immediately. So they continue to engage, they learn, they practice, and they grow with their coach and with the resources that they have. So you're probably asking yourself, but how do I know it's working? Like, that's the $1 million question. What's the impact? So first, I'll say that we do capture all of the actions within the platform in the form of data that can be tracked, measured, shared back to you as our partner. And when needed, we actually have behavioral scientists, my former team before I was in this role with our sales performance solution, help make sense of the early program data, and they help you with the real-time suggestions for how to adjust the approach within your organization to see the greatest impact. And for you all as our sales enablement partners who are often the ones deploying these initiatives or as part of your efforts in support of the sales teams, although I will say, like, we do have partners who we work like directly with the sales leaders, not as often as with sales enablement in support of the sales leaders. But you all get that real-time dynamic insight on how everyone is doing. And not just engagement, not just are people loving it, but you get a deep view of what are the areas of interest to your participants. What are the focus areas of their conversations with their coaches? What learning is happening? And what impact is it having on the sales team and the sales org? And this is an unprecedented level of understanding of sales teams and the impact that your sales enablement support is having on them. And it all runs on the back end. And just one of the key areas of insight that you would get into is through our Sales Excellence Index. So this is BetterUp's proprietary measure developed based on the thousands of experiences and data points that we have working with other sales professionals on what makes them effective and drives sales top line results. And so you get this at your fingertips, and you can see before and after. Where is everyone at the start, and how do they make progress over time? And you can benchmark against industry, even internally, you can see results by region. And so as an example for you here, the data actually becomes synthesized into actionable insights on the population's productivity, even their team performance, their overall experiences. And I will say, because this actually is essential and is part of the cornerstones of why this works so well, is at BetterUp, we take really seriously protecting privacy and anonymity. Leading indicators actually give organizations a pulse on what emerging needs and risks are showing up across the company. And it's because we do it in a way that protects each individual, you are able to see where the needs are showing up and how. And so if you pull all of that together, progress is then quantifiable and it's visible. and we make it very transparent for you. You can see this through some real organizational data that I'll actually show you in just a second. But I'll share here, one of our partners who kicked off by inviting 10,000 of their employees in one instance. They were able to ultimately track this impact and also see deal dollar values. And so let's click forward and think about, okay, realistically, what is that impact? So if we appropriately measure key components of really what matters, then we can be much more targeted with how we help our sales teams grow and flourish. And so I actually just hopped off of a call with another organization where they were really honing in on, like, their sales managers weren't performing the way that they needed to. They were missing some of these key managerial skills that really made their team suffer. And I was able to share very similar data like this that we have from studies of our own 360 data, working with, again, many, many teams across different functions and organizations, just sharing that there's this ripple effect from sales leaders who are not thriving, who are not doing well. So we know when cognitive agility is low in a sales manager, their team members are less agile. When the sales manager is less resilient, their team members perform at lower levels. When the sales manager can't think strategically, there is a marked drop in even innovation on the team. Like, think about, like, when you have to get creative as a seller in the relationships that you have and how you're reaching out to organizations, how you're organizing to win. And we know that every company has growing concerns about the Great Resignation. When sales leaders are struggling, turnover intentions go way up for their direct reports. But I think, as we just learned here, we can actually do better. And this is the better that I want to show you. Just as one example, we worked with an organization that experienced a 17x return. And I will say, these are real dollars. So this actually happened in their organization. This is not a projected return. It's not an estimated return. We actually compared their sales teams with the sales managers who received Better Up sales performance support and coaching with those who didn't. And as you can see here, the ones who did engage with Better Up had a 20% increase in the value of their sales opportunities, also bigger pipeline. Their team goal attainment went up by 11%. I should say accurately, their team goal attainment was 11% higher than the teams who did not receive Better Up coaching. And the teams who did also had 60% higher quota achievement. And what that actually translates to is teams who had $10 million more in bookings in just one quarter compared to the teams who did not experience Better Up sales performance. And so you might go, well, wait, how did that exactly happen? And it's a simple path. We work with people on the mindsets and behaviors that matter. That helps them improve their productivity, and their productivity leads to revenue for the business. So I'll leave you on this final question or thought exercise is, are you ready to make a real impact on your sales teams? Thank you all. All right, I'd love to take some questions if we have any. Jack, how'd we do?
Maya, thank you so much for that presentation. Yeah, really insightful. And yes, we have had a few questions come in privately, so I'd love to put them to you. So the first question is, do you only work with certain industries?
Great question. We don't actually, and this can often be surprising because a lot of organizations think, oh gosh, like this is something that's largely for the technology space. This is where people are the early adopters. And it's actually not the case at all. I was speaking yesterday with a 100-year-old engineering construction company. And this is something that we're going to be working on with them. So it absolutely spans industry, technology, finance, engineering and construction, multimedia, even in the medical field, huge space in like medical device sales. Absolutely. So definitely not any one field.
Awesome.
Great question.
So the second question here is, sales managers are already busy. How do you make sure they are engaged or they engage even?
Oh, love it. Yes. This comes up. I will say, like, I can't even bat not like it comes up a lot because they are busy or they're going from call to call or their day is unpredictable. And what I say to that is, and it comes back to making it something that in their day and day life, like they immediately need to feel that it's having an impact for them. And not just like, I don't mean like ushy gushy feeling. I mean, like, they're going to see a direct impact on their work and on their team's work, on even on how their opportunities progress, because they get really specific guidance and support that is fitting into and understands their daily life. We launched an organization, I think it might have been just 2 weeks ago now already. It's a global multimedia organization. We launched with about 300 of their sales professionals and managers. And within 24 hours, they had an 80% activation rate. 80%. I mean, that's kind of mind boggling because like you can't get that many people to attend a training or even use their Salesforce on a regular basis. Although we would want them to. Please encourage everyone to standardize and use your tools. But yeah, it's about making sure that it's meaningful for them and helps them immediately. So they absolutely use it. It's in the flow of their day. They choose when and how.
Awesome. And yeah, the third question from the private chat was from Andrew, who said, how would this work if we have an existing sales methodology in place?
Gotcha. That's a good question. So I will say better up is sales methodology, sales process, sales tools agnostic. So what we actually do is we come in and we almost create like this infrastructure, the scaffolding in a way that actually helps reinforce your sales methodology. Again, going back to the idea that the coaches that are working with you through Better Up are past sales professionals, executives, so they deeply understand the methodologies and the tools, and we enable them on your processes so that they're speaking your language and actually help reinforce the sales methodology and tools that you are using, but pull that together with the needs of the specific sales leaders or sales teams.
Awesome, nice. That does in fact bring us to time, unfortunately. I know there is a few more questions in the chat. So if anyone does have any questions for Maya, please feel free to reach out to her over on LinkedIn, and I'm sure that she'll be more than happy to answer any more questions and continue the conversation over there. With that said, Maya, thank you so much for taking the time to present to us. And to everyone that tuned in, thank you so much. And yeah, we'll see you all very soon.
Thank you all.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye all.